Hi everyone, it's Val here from Ziptales. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we have Richard McRoberts with us. Richard's the director of Ziptales. He began as a teacher, then became an author, and is now publisher at Ziptales. Richard's here to talk to us about a really interesting topic, using games to teach grammar. This webinar will run for around 25 minutes of content and suggested activities, followed by around 5 minutes of questions and answers. If you have any questions along the way, we invite you to ask them using the text chat box over to the right side of your screen. So Richard, take it away.
Using games to teach grammar. Let's start with a quick test. Which is right? My friend and I went to see the movie, or my friend and me went to see the movie. Or a child says, they said in that American movie she danced real good. Is that right? What is wrong with she danced real good? These and other questions of grammar come up daily. Any correction or editing or proofing will throw up numerous issues of this kind. The curriculum documents clearly point to a knowledge of grammar as a desirable outcome. For example, Year 4, Australia. Understand that the meaning of sentences can be enriched through the use of noun groups, phrases, and verb groups, phrases, and prepositional clauses. Understand the difference between main and subordinate clauses and that a complex sentence involves at least one subordinate clause. Uses a range of text conventions, including most grammatical conventions, appropriately and with increasing accuracy. That's part of the New Zealand Level 3. So it is important to have a working knowledge of grammar, but how to teach it? How to avoid groans of, "Not more grammar, please," or "I hate grammar." How can a teacher make grammar fun? Or is that an oxymoron, like living dead or deafening silence? No, it's not. You can make grammar fun. And it's cheap and easy. The beauty of this approach is that it will vastly increase retention and working knowledge. This webinar has the brief, How to Make Grammar Enjoyable. Its sections are as follows. Overview of the grammar debate, what aspects of grammar are critical to student writing, how to establish a basic knowledge of the parts of speech, how to teach nouns, how to teach pronouns, how to teach verbs, how to teach adjectives, how to teach adverbs, and troubleshooting common mistakes. Grammar is a minefield in terms of the theory. You will have heard of transformational grammar, functional grammar, and any number of other varieties. The truth is that such schema are largely the province of academics. Just explaining Chomsky, transformational grammar, to teachers, let alone students, would take hours. In practice, the standard syllabus depends on the notion there is a standard English or commonly accepted way of speaking and writing, and that to ignore this is to condemn children to producing non-compliant language, which in many social situations will be construed as less valuable. To take another bit of the curriculum, reread and edit students' own and others' work using agreed criteria for text structures and language features. That's a Year 6 outcome. This approach can be called prescriptive grammar, meaning that we understand that there are agreed criteria. The curriculum writers, ever nervous of being socially insensitive, avoid the words correct or wrong, but they are directing teachers towards making sure children know about the rules or the conventions or the correct way of speaking and writing. Put it this way. A child writes, "I seen him and I ain't sure what he done." What does the teacher say? A, "That's lovely, good work." Or B, "Why don't we change I seen to I saw and I ain't to I'm not sure and what he done to what he did?" Most would take the latter course, B, and gently nudge the child towards standard English. They will never in a million years get into the metacognitive reasons. If you write that, people will think you don't have a grasp of English, but that's what they're thinking. And while an argument could rage forever about whether this is politically correct, the teacher knows that an adult, an employer, the secondary English teacher will all accept that I saw him and I'm not sure what he did is more likely to be acceptable. It's an unspoken part of a teacher's mission to avoid the child disadvantaging himself by using non-standard language simply because of background or ignorance when it could be easily corrected. What are the basics? Nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. I wouldn't worry too much about prepositions and conjunctions. Most children will get them right 99% of the time. Nor would I go into the complexities of the subjunctive. Most people won't know the difference between if I were more energetic-eyed or if I was more energetic-eyed. This is where prescriptive needs to be careful of being overzealous. I certainly wouldn't worry about identifying subtleties like past simple and past historic. Far too hard for English speakers, though necessary if you're learning French or Spanish. For that matter, I think the predicate is a painful and not particularly useful concept. Let's keep it to the basic concepts. So, how to explain parts of speech? Let's take a simple sentence like this. A little girl played happily in her garden. Here we have the basics in 8 words. The essential idea is simple. Girl, a noun. Who was it? Played, verb. What was she doing? These 2 words make sense on their own, but most people want to add useful bits of information, such as a indefinite article. She's not someone you'd know. If it were the would tell you that she was someone already referred to. A girl played. A complete sentence. But a bit bald. What sort of girl was she? A little girl. The adjective which describes her. So, a little girl played. Where did she play? In, preposition, the place, her, possessive pronoun, it was her place, garden, noun. And how did she play? Can we add something more to a sense of her state of mind? The little girl played happily in her garden. At this point, we have a really satisfying sentence. We can easily turn just 8 words into a complete picture of what is happening. This shows all the major classes of words, the parts of speech, in action. I would start with something really simple like this. Now, may I suggest the first game? It's called Mix and Match. It's a whole class exercise. You take the 8 words and brainstorm as many options as you can for each word. Like, a little girl played happily in her garden. Could become, the big boy jumped noisily around his bedroom. The silly dog barked incessantly outside its kennel. An angry bird perched precariously atop a tree. This exercise has the effect of focusing children's attention on what each class of word is doing. Because the substitution exercise involved does not confuse them with any new elements, conjunctions, auxiliary verbs, changes of tense, etc., they can generate variations on these basics and keep the grammatical terms, common noun, verb, adverb, and so on, all in sight at the same time. A variation on this exercise, which we might call Mix and Match Advanced, has the essential elements varied more creatively. These could be done on the board, again with everyone participating and suggesting options. So it might be Maisie, proper noun this time, danced in her room. Or a little girl called Maisie, noun phrase, sang loudly in the treehouse. Or Maisie, a nice little girl I know, noun phrase, glumly did her homework. The goal is to gradually strengthen children's grasp of the key terms, the parts of speech, while seeing that even these basics can be endlessly changed. It's designed to take the fear out of the meta-language, Maisie being a proper noun, and linking each term with the actual words. Let's remember that the many sections of the parts of speech of English can be confusing, scary, but by keeping to the basics you can achieve a lot. Here are the first set of grammar games and some useful setup lessons on Ziptales. Go fishing. Students generate a set of words under the headings nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs. When finished, they play Go Fish. Speech bag. Students help in the creation of 8 labelled bags for the major parts of speech: nouns, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions and articles. Each of these is filled with word cards. The cards are pulled out and students make sentences out of them. All of these have detailed instructions as a separate handout. Grammar Scrabble. Students generate sentences, then put the words onto cards and pull them. A separate group takes the cards and 2 players make up sentences out of them. The winner is the one who creates 4 sensible sentences first. The Jabberwocky game. This is a game based on Lewis Carroll's famous poem Jabberwocky. It involves isolating the 28 new words he created for the poem, analysing them one by one, and then creating other variants for each. A game that unites meta-analysis and creativity, and which will open up the pleasures of language. Scrambled sentences. In groups, children create sentences of up to 14 words. For example, that is one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. These sentences are then broken down onto cards, shuffled and handed to another group to be reconstructed and labelled. Cartoons for classifying. This game uses cartoons as the source material and analyses the parts of speech in the cartoon. This exercise requires a little private research but is very agreeable and a very memorable activity. Then there are skill builders. There are special lessons on Ziptales for each of the following: nouns, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, prepositions and sentences. These lessons are ideal boot camp material. You can just sit back and work through the basics before beginning a staged series of games. And the specialised English lessons, the following units are devoted to the key parts of speech: what are nouns for, what are verbs for, what are relating verbs, what are adverbs for, what are personal pronouns, what is a simple sentence, expanding simple sentences, all to be found in the years 3 and 4 section. What are noun phrases, how to use verbs, what time is it, adding descriptors, how to join sentences. How to explain nouns. The big 4 here are common nouns, proper nouns, abstract nouns, and collective nouns. For the sake of keeping everyone's brains clutter-free, I'm ignoring mass nouns: rice, air, milk, traffic. They are optional extras for extension. Most children will be completely up to speed on common nouns: chair, hat, bicycle, teacher, television, moon, etc. The only issue that may come up as an area of difficulty is plural endings. By this I mean, is it mosquitoes, OS, or mosquitoes, OES? Is it fairies, YS, or fairies, IES? And why? Are there rules? May I recommend the general lesson on nouns in Skill Builders and the lessons Predictable Plurals and Weird Plurals in the Spelling Suite, also in Skill Builders, which spell out these rules in great detail. However, the same cannot be said for proper nouns. They can be harder to nail down. Proper nouns: William Shakespeare, Miss Marple, the Eiffel Tower, Sydney, I. The trick is that capital. Revising this will benefit from a simple parallel. This is the notion of a man and a woman. It could be any man or any woman. In other words, it's the concept, the common word for a whole class of things: all people who are male, all people who are female. But Ben Noble, Emily Madison. Here we are talking unique entities. Ben is unique. Emily is unique. Their names are their labels. In recognition of this, in English, we use a capital. The same logic applies to non-human unique identities: Sydney, Eiffel Tower, etc. Abstract nouns: love, intelligence, fear, ideas, misgivings, despair. These are fun words and quite easy to handle. Occasional plurals: love, loves, but no capitals. The main challenge is to teach children that while they are invisible, not concrete nouns such as person or hat, they are still nouns. Some activities. Who am I? Students in groups of 4, A, B, C, D, E, etc., create a list of common nouns. For example, tiger, harp, happiness. Next, the game Who Am I? The student who can guess the mystery word wins. See the instructions. Name the noun. This group game focuses on the difference between common and proper nouns. Abstract Pictionary. Students in a special drawing group create cards to illustrate abstract nouns. For example, fear, surprise, beauty, pain. These are displayed and the rest of the class must guess the word. Invisible nouns. This is an amusing exercise in which you focus on abstract nouns. You find a poster like the one shown and you talk about emotions and other invisible qualities. Then you basically work on definitions and it becomes a game because the kids have to figure out from the definition what the word is or vice versa. Collective catch-up. This game requires research. Students must find out all the collective nouns. For example, a murder of crows, a pod of whales, etc., and then put them on sheets or cards. A control group must then guess at the class of noun involved while the originators sit back and watch and perhaps give hints. And don't forget skill builders and the specialised English lessons. How to explain pronouns. The list here seems to go on forever. Personal, I, you. Possessive, my, yours. Relative, who, whom. Demonstrative, this, that. Reflexive, myself, yourself, and others. I would stick to the first two. They are where most of the errors occur. Personal pronouns. I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they, in the singular and the plural. And the object pronouns, me, you, him, her, it, us, you, them. And then, of course, the possessive pronouns, my, your, his, her, its, our, your, their. The notion of person, of course, is a complicated one. It can be best explained with a simple picture or drawing. Imagine an island. On it is just one person. Let's call him Jack. How many people are on the island? One. Jack. He is the first person. If Jack sees a boat and calls, "Hello, I want to be rescued," he uses the pronoun I because it refers to him alone. It is the first person pronoun. It is his name for himself. If another person swims to the island, you can draw this, the other person in relation to Jack is the second person. Hi, it's good to see you. If a third person staggers up, that person is the third person. It's good to see her too. Important note, the subject is the grammatical name for the doer of the verb. It always comes before the verb. Let's look at Emily and Ben again. Emily is going to see Ben. She is going to see him. Emily is the doer. Who is going to see Ben? Emily. She, the subject of the verb, is going to see Ben. We don't see her is going to see Ben. The object is the person or thing to which the action is done. So Emily is going to see him. Ben is the object of Emily's action. We wouldn't say Emily is going to see he. The biggest problem is with the pronouns I and me. What is wrong with this sentence? She and me are going on a picnic. That's right. Incorrect use of the object pronoun. When both people are the subject of the verb, it has to be she and I are going on a picnic. Possessive pronouns. My, your, his, hers, its, ours, your, their. This is the same deal but with possession as the focus. Who owns or possesses a thing? It is my book. It is your book. It is her book, etc. Some activities. Spot the pronoun. The teacher provides a text, perhaps a short story or even a joke, with a known number of pronouns. The first person to highlight all of them wins. A variation on this is to have one person read the text and children call out pronoun when they hear one. What matches? This is a game in which all the 24 basic pronouns have to be put onto different cards. You then add in a small number of verb cards and some proper nouns and common nouns. Then the game itself involves the cards all being shuffled, and a player has 30 seconds to put together a simple sentence. It's quite an amusing game, and it does focus children's attention. Fill the gaps, a pairs activity. In this exercise, students take a piece of writing they have written. They then rewrite the piece and remove all pronouns. The other person in the pair has to fill in the gaps. How to explain verbs? Once again, this is a massive field. My advice would be to keep it as simple as possible. Jamie rides his bike. Simple present, the no frills version. Jamie is riding his bike. Present continuous, showing it's going on right now. Jamie rode his bike. Simple past tense, the action is over. Jamie was riding his bike when, past continuous, showing that it was happening when, presumably something else intervened. Jamie will ride his bike, future tense, the action hasn't happened yet. And Jamie would like to ride his bike, conditional tense, the action hasn't yet happened and may never happen. I would stop there. Avoid the quicksands of grammatical terminology, finite verbs, non-finite, auxiliaries or helping verbs, gerunds, infinitives and so on. I would instead concentrate on picking up those common mistakes referred to in the final section of this webinar. The problem of tenses. The concept of tense or time signature is easily explained. Lucy jumped, past, or Lucy has jumped. Lucy jumps, present, or Lucy is jumping. Lucy will jump, future, or Lucy will be jumping. All good, but what about mixing them up? Rule. Once a text is begun in one tense, it must continue in that tense unless clearly signposted, and for a very good reason. So, an example. Lucy came into the gymnasium. She took off her sweater, she warmed up, she did stretches, she went to the bar and lifted her leg, she climbed onto the rings and did her workout. 8 verbs in the past tense. Perfect. But, and you'll find children of course do this, Lucy came into the gymnasium, she takes off her sweater, she warms up, she does stretches, she went to the bar and lifts her leg, she climbs onto the rings and does her workout. 8 verbs, but 5 are in the present and 3 are in the past. Bit of a disaster. Some activities. Manic mime. Children work in groups. They come up with a set of action words, for example, bounce, cry, climb. They practice miming the verb. Then they do their actions and another group must work out which verb is being presented. Look, the instructions are at the separate handout, of course. It's time. Whole class, children write down 3 verbs on cards, each in the different tense. These cards are dealt out to the class. A monitor or the teacher calls, "Jodie, what do you have?" She says, "ran." "What tense?" And off you go, of course. And tell a story. This is a more challenging exercise. It's a theatre sport activity with 3 teams, A, B, C. The first player, A, makes up the beginning of the story. Johnny was walking through the forest when he... And a player from B group has to supply the word. He fell in a hole, for example. And then, of course, the third team, the C team, has to come up with another way of dealing with the problem of what happens next, which might be there was a door in the hole, or whatever it is. There has to be a verb in each case, but the verb itself then pushes the action in the direction that the child does. And this can be very, very amusing and quite challenging. How to explain adjectives. Once more, the list is endless. Descriptive, yellow or hot, comparative, better or taller, superlative, best, tallest, and so on. The beauty of adjectives is that they never vary. The only serious catch is in the comparatives. The big dinosaur, the bigger dinosaur, the biggest dinosaur. Another problem is that while most adjectives do this comparative superlative operation using standard endings, like this list, a few very old ones are completely irregular. Here are some of the classics. These need regular workouts. And finally, there are the compound adjective clusters where the adjective stays the same, but a qualifier is added in front. And there they are. You can see them. They're all very familiar, but they do need a little bit of work. Some activities. Add an adjective. 2 teams create a sentence with missing adjectives. Synonym scramble. 6 groups build a series of variations on master adjectives. For example, sad gives unhappy, miserable, etc. These are scrambled and selected. Antonym attack. In pairs, one, A, generates the adjectives and the other, B, must find antonyms. And don't forget the skill builders and the special English lessons. How to explain adverbs. The word comes from the Latin next to the verb. The good news is that adverbs are largely trouble-free. Revision, or if you like, consciously naming them, is a key part of what is needed. Lucy jumps. How does Lucy jump? Lucy jumps happily, or quickly, or excitedly. These are, of course, adverbs of manner, the how factor. Then there are adverbs of time. Lucy jumps now. Lucy jumps regularly. Lucy jumps rarely. And adverbs of place. Lucy jumps up. Lucy jumps away. Lucy jumps everywhere. I would finish a unit of revision of adverbs with a quick look at comparatives, which actually look very much like adjectives. Lucy is jumping quickly. Lucy is jumping more quickly. Lucy is jumping most quickly. Activities. Charades. The object is to come up with adverbs, for example, nervously, and then play charades. See the instructions. Adverb shuffle. This involves making synonyms. Teams create a sentence with missing adjectives. Picture this. 4 teams create a list of adverbs. A volunteer draws the adverb and the class have to guess what it is. And don't forget the skill builders and the special English lessons. Finally, troubleshooting common problems. I and me. Julie and I went to see the principal. The principal saw Julie and I. Is that right? Look at the separate handout and you'll get all the detail. Misplaced or dangling, as they're sometimes called, modifiers. At 8 years old, my father gave me a pony for Christmas. After rotting in the cellar for months, my brother brought up some oranges. And then there are the old classics where quasi-homophones pose a trap. Affect and effect, its and itst, lie and lay, lose and loose, practice and practice, there and there, who and whom, and your and your. For a full discussion of these vexed issues, see the accompanying instruction sheet. And look out next for a webinar on the other difficult aspects of teaching English, punctuation and spelling problems. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Richard. I hope that was really useful to everyone, as there were some great insights there. Richard's staying with us for another few minutes to answer any questions that you might have. Here's a question from Celia. Don't you think grammatical terms confuse children? Why not just work on the actual problems as they come up?
Yes, I agree, Celia, that teachers need to be sensitive about this issue. Too much labelling, particularly in a humorless way, can be off-putting. And I agree that a short list of problems, I and me, etc., is effective. But the curriculum expects teachers to make children familiar with these concepts. And it's quite easy to show how, for example, a proper noun needs to be capitalised while other types do not. In short, a modest amount of explicit teaching, particularly if it can be made fun, will move the kids on in a very useful way.
And now one from Martin. Isn't being prescriptive going to make kids feel bad?
I would suggest the teachers are very good at sweetening a lesson. To say we don't say I done it is of course making a judgment, but it is in the best interests of the child. It's just pointing out that people expect I did it, because that's the standard way of saying it. Would they come to school in their pyjamas or thongs? There are accepted ways of doing things, and grammar is a classic example. To retreat into relativism and say that it doesn't really matter is to knowingly allow the child to wear the wrong uniform or look silly. I wouldn't.
And now one from Mary. You mentioned the Ziptales lessons. What level do they cater for?
Thanks, Mary. The lessons mentioned are in two places. Skill Builders, which is part of the extending library, where you have a range of explicit teaching of nouns, verbs, and all the rest. And also in specialised English lessons, SEL, where there are lessons for all levels. The 12 lessons mentioned in the webinar are just for middle and upper school. But these lessons, and the Skill Builders lessons too, are well worth looking at.
And lastly, we've got time for one from Julie. Why don't you mention punctuation? That's interconnected and a major source of problems for children.
Absolutely, Julie, I agree entirely. But what we covered in this webinar barely fitted the time available. We'll be having more on punctuation and other spelling issues next year, attacking those problems separately. Stay tuned.
Thanks again to all participants. Don't forget the PD certificates will be available tomorrow. Just let us know your email address and they'll be sent out. Thank you for your time.